streaming. Oh, there we go. I think that fixed it. Yeah. All right. So sorry about the late time to get the stream going. Mm-hmm. All right, so if someone wants to, hello, Sean Feldman's here. So I'm ready for questions. I have some of our Meetup Miro board that we used over all of COVID. So lots of things were covered here in terms of maintaining event source systems and obviously doing event modeling as well. So feel free to peruse that. If you go to the eventmodeling.org site on the resources page, there's a link for the Slack channel. And then in that Slack channel, there's a time. Yeah, so basically, if you go to the Slack channel, you will have the Slack, I guess it's not a channel, the Slack group for event modeling, and then there's a channel there called time tracking, which has a link to this board pinned. So that's how you find your way there, and that's where we do all of that discussion over all of COVID here. So let's see. Hi, Ivan, good to see you here as well. So we got a few people coming in. I'm going just to retweet this that we're live, and hopefully everyone will join in. Let's see if I can just get this on YouTube so I can post a link directly to YouTube as well, which would be great to get people joining here. That's interesting. YouTube doesn't show me as live on here. No, it does actually. My apologies. So I'll share this, copy the link, and I think I can do this on Mastodon. So I switched to Mastodon for the majority of my social interactions. I'm really happy there's no algo there to downplay anything disruptive like event modeling or event sourcing. Engagement seems to be way higher on Mastodon, as there's no algorithm promoting some other hot topic over the technical things you're looking for. So it's been quite nice that that's going on right now, and we can thank Elon for giving some space to really good decentralized platforms like Mastodon. So if you're not on Mastodon yet, probably would be a good idea to get on there. A lot of people have deserted Twitter entirely. Some are posting on both. Some are still staying, waiting it out. But I created a cross poster because I know there's a few people on Twitter that will remain. So most of my posts are going to be from Mastodon, getting repeated on Twitter. So let's make sure that I tweet all this out. Not tweet, sorry, toot. That's the new word. I have to toot this out. I still got the old way of thinking there. So we're live for the AMA. That's what I'll say. We're live for the AMA on and of course the hashtags are important on Mastodon, so also for readers, they would like them to be capitalized letters within the hashtag so that they read things properly. So event modeling with a capital E, capital M. Unfortunately, I didn't do that the first time I posted, so there's a bunch of lowercase ones. But yeah, we'll see a lot of people here. and event sourcing. Yeah, so go ahead and add any kind of questions that you may have about it. Otherwise, I'll just talk about some of the topics over the last 2 weeks that were covered in either event sourcing or event modeling on either Twitter or now Mastodon. And yeah, so let's see if this works. Paste, YouTube, publish. There's a lot of people signed up, so we had 40. So I expect, there's only 7 people here right now. So from the 40 that signed up, I'm hoping that the link is working. I might actually just post a comment in the meetup as well, and hopefully that'll fix things. Let's see, meetup.com. Meetup actually made a second application, although I should be doing this from their website. But yeah. Event check-in, manage event. Event meetup. Maybe I can just post a comment there in the other application. All right, comments. Add a comment in case the stream isn't working. Here is the link. Paste YouTube link, and because everything's going Fediverse, I'm going to try and do something also outside of YouTube as well. I think it's better to give that a go. I want to get a separate little server box to split the signal and pipe things out to another platform. That would be really good too. All right, so great. All that seems to be done. I did tweet that out, and I think it got repeated. Sorry, tweeted that out, and it got repeated on Twitter, so we're good to go. All right. So no questions from anyone on YouTube yet. Sean, did you have any questions, or Ivan? Because you guys are talking here right now. But if not, I'm going to go and scour the discussions over the last 2 weeks and see if I can bring up some topics that were discussed. Yeah, back to the search. Where are we here? Search. And let's try event modeling. There's been some discussions from the usual dissidents on LinkedIn saying typical stuff. Event sourcing is too complicated, etc., which is furthest thing from the truth. Unfortunately, couldn't really imagine doing anything without event sourcing these days. It's been quite a nice way of working. I don't see any YouTube live streams, so some people are asking, so I think I'll just repaste this and hopefully more people come in. And yeah. So just posted. Some people are asking. Earlier today, software developers are the worst at estimating the effort required to build something. That's true if you're building things just following Agile and the kind of go-to methodologies out there today. And the reason the estimates don't work is there is an ambiguity as to when the project ends, and along that timeline you also have an exponential increase in the complexity of the software, and therefore every feature gets more and more expensive as you go. That's a sign of lack of design, and this is why engineering has estimates and why software development doesn't. So with event modeling, you take care of the design so that you can have estimates like you have in engineering. Of course, if that's not possible, you are actually dealing with just analyzing that complexity better with steps. So I think when people start to look at event modeling, they start to see that some of these things that were not possible before are now possible. So let me adjust my seat. I don't know why my seat's so low. All right, there we go. I can not sit like that anymore. That would be great. So I'm very curious to hear from the real world experience about mixing event modeling and later event sourcing with already existing conventional implementation. What are the things to watch out for? What are the real traps one would stay away at any possible cost? That's a very common question. What I found very helpful is to, depending on the size of the system, especially if it's really large, is to empirically reverse engineer an event model and to capture what the intents are as you're using the software as events. And then you do that mismatch of the of the actual mental model with the implementation model. So you could start to look at the changes in the database as you're noting the events, such as sign up or purchase a product or whatever with your legacy system. You start to cover your workflow and what you're trying to accomplish with events that make sense to you and map those to how that state changed in the system. And I think the biggest takeaway is not to get distracted by trying to reverse engineer the code, as that's going to lead you to a lot of rabbit holes that may actually not be relevant. I think you'll get to a point where you can cut off some of these old things quickly and be able to move on. So that's kind of how I would do it. So hello to Aaron who joined us. Nice to have you. I think the biggest trap, Sean, is to try not to get distracted by implementation details of the old code as much as possible. Keep that empirical state is king kind of outlook for things, and you should be much better off. If you do have some decent traditional system that has some architecture behind it and some modularity behind it, you could probably go to a change data capture just in front of anything being written to the database, and things that are basically getting fired off from either automation or UI interactions. That's what I would do, but at any cost, I would definitely, not want to promote swimming in the code that was created in the old way that doesn't have the accountability in it, etc. You may have some solutions that have decent logging, but after the fact logging, like not event sourcing, where you may be able to use those things, but again, they're not 100% reliable. If you have some sort of implementation that manages to use monads or AOP aspects to kind of take care of logging in a more complete way, so that you're not missing any specific notation of state change, potential state change, or other actions, that may be useful. But I would definitely do this in that order. State is the absolute king. So look at what you're thinking the events are, that the user's going through in their minds, and how that maps to the records being affected in the database below of a traditional system. Hi Campbell. Hi Kyle. Good to see you again. Lots of people coming in. So Kyle, Aaron, go ahead and ask questions if you like. I'm going to go through whatever I can from the 2 weeks since the last AMA. I'm going to try to make this a regular every 2 week event so that we can recap the more interesting or relevant discussions, and give you an opportunity to ask and kind of get some help. Maybe if you're working on event source systems or event modeling, that would be kind of nice to have that for people. Again, if you have questions about any of this during your project, the event modeling Slack channel on the eventmodeling.org site is probably a good place to reach out. I know the community there is already starting to answer a lot of the questions, so it's not just me anymore, which is great. So let's take a look at what else we have from event modeling besides me. But of course, a big shout out to Fractalio, which is really doing a lot with event modeling, which is nice to see. There's more and more companies doing this. We had also some companies in Germany that are starting to do a lot with event modeling, which is nice. Let's see what else. So I think Derek, who has a good channel about event sourcing and all that, said that modeling based around time is an excellent example of something not very intuitive but makes a ton of sense once you realize it. I kind of disagree with that. I think modeling around time is very intuitive. I think it's not intuitive for technical people because we've been working in a state as is now canonical model for so long. I keep talking about this. So if you were to start modeling systems today and you had no experience before, then you would have definitely a more natural way of just coming to the specifications on a timeline. Anyway, it wouldn't be so alien. So I think there's a lot more unlearning to do in terms of what people get taught at universities, what boot camps teach, what every single tutorial out there has. It's going to talk to you about a canonical data model with everything normalized because that's the way you do it, quote unquote. It is not how humans did it for thousands of years. So this intuition thing has to be, these comments about that modeling around time is not intuitive I think is false. I think it's something that's a particular aspect of being a programmer and not even a systems architect or workflow designer. I think anything else in terms of system design, whether it's digitized or not, actually comes quite naturally to be time-based. So this is just undoing a lot of history as we always see. Let's move on to the next question. Feel free. Tiago, nice to see you. More people joining. Hello. It would be good if you guys ask questions, but I'll continue on. Of course, in October we had, just at the end of October, there was a Russian company that did some good investigation, a case study into event modeling. You have to turn on your translate, obviously, to read that article. I did retweet it, I believe, so before I started using Mastodon, I'll probably repost this on Mastodon. I will be starting an event modeling channel on Mastodon, account, and I will also be starting an account for our company, Adaptive Group, to get relevant info through the right types of accounts, and basically repost a few things, key points for over the last year or two to those channels, so all the new people that are on Mastodon that are following event modeling and event sourcing for the first time can get a bit of info sprinkled in. And so this article from this Russian company was quite interesting. They documented, I believe, their first event modeling project, and the takeaway was that there's a lot of inefficiencies still, obviously, as you're trying a new methodology, that it's going to take a while for people to get used to a different notation, and that's good. And so, even though there's a bit of slowdown for people to go in and change the event model, that's natural. That's the first time you do something. It's going to be your worst attempt, and the amount of success that they had on their first attempt is incredibly encouraging. So once you get good and you're in your second and third attempt and you get used to it, you'll go much faster than any traditional kind of way, since event modeling does remove the need to coordinate multiple tools, multiple processes. So yeah, I'm going to try and translate this. Maybe I'll see if I can get this on the web, on the stream here, because it would be nice for you guys to be able to read this. So give me a second here. I'll try to do that. Let me say hi. First, I'm here. We are working on create event sourcing framework C# and Cosmos DB. Do you have many using Cosmos DB and DynamoDB for document store? Yes. Hi. So yes, we had some experience with using Cosmos. I'm not that particular on frameworks or anything like that. I think really doing event sourcing, since it's really event handlers and command handlers, it's a low overhead way of working. Try to use collections of libraries rather than forcing yourself to a framework, and then get a convention of how you move forward, implementing each of these slices one to the other. Again, getting that copy paste rhythm, where you're not really looking at your infrastructure at all as you get going. Yeah, everyone is always attracted to event sourcing by saying, well, this is a really good framework, and they get stuck at the infrastructure level. But really what you're looking at is being able to deliver the value, the actual functionality through event handlers and command handlers and some UI, and then looking at the event sourcing aspect of it as being a really, really good way to track state with its history, which will allow you to get out of tricky situations. So here's another. Hi, Damien. Oh, and Jeff is here too. Welcome. Another question. I'm wondering how event modeling suits so-called archaeology, digging and figuring out how does the process look like without fully fledged implementations going on. Not sure I understand fully, but if event modeling is really about designing what your workflow's goals are, and this information completeness check, seeing the information on the last step of your workflow or key steps in your workflow, being able to trace back those key pieces of information through all the previous steps to understand that you're not missing a huge chunk. And actually, Diego Martin had a really good post on LinkedIn earlier that kind of went over that, and I'm going to try and get that as well. So I have a couple of things to show you here, but Diego's post was really interesting and had a good insight. Is that event modeling forces you to not ignore some of those incomplete pieces, right? So yeah, so this archaeology of digging through to see if your requirements are actually complete, that's one of the core strengths of event modeling, that you can tie those pieces, again, not just whether those exist somewhere in a table, but actually when in the workflow they made it into the system, and when they were available, and how many calls across different subsystems or microservices or whatever you have, how many of those jumps had to be made. Is it okay to make those jumps? Is there security issues when you're doing that? Especially when you're talking about the demilitarized zones in networks, and what's exposed to the public on your website versus once you log in, what access do you have there? All those things can be measured with event modeling because you're tracking information flow, and you can decorate those things. So I think the term archaeology is kind of a funny one to use, but I think it's really about fulfilling and being able to exhaust dependencies, which is one of the reasons we often have no estimates, because we just don't bother chasing those dependencies, and we throw our hands in the air and say there's no estimates because we're going to be chasing those as we implement, instead of actually just upfront saying where's this information coming from, when does it come into the system. So hopefully that answers your question. And meanwhile, I'll try and get this going on. Show you that other article. So let me just see here. Let's transition back to just me while I pop up the right thing on Twitter here, because that's where it was posted. And let's see. I believe it's okay, a little bit further back. There it is. Let me see if I can show it here. All right, I think I got it. Transition. Yeah, so there was this tweet here. Let's see the date. So yeah, October 29th, if you search for event modeling mentions. This company did a nice abstract here. I'm gonna just turn on translate. I believe I can. I translate. Yeah, there we go. So it's translated to English. Yeah, it's quite a good read from September, yeah, 2017. So that's odd. It's actually quite old. I'm not sure why that date is there, but if they're already doing this, then that's great, because I really didn't publish much about this then. And if you can take a look at their case study, identifying outputs, what should be done, what happened, they have a really good explanation as to how their team reacted to using this. They did a really good job of following the dependencies and outlining which subsystem was used for which part of the system. You can also see that classic cascade of events that is talking about as you move through your workflows. You can see the propagation of information from systems as you go from maybe acquisition of users to signups to browsing of products to actually purchasing things, and then finally rating your experience, right? You can imagine those are each different services in your company, and so you can see a cascade of information going through, especially when it's attached to the user experience along the way, so you can really see how that information goes through. So yeah, quite a lot of interesting things here about the conclusions. How long it took, when you're actually are concentrating on event modeling, it is work, right? This is not a magic thing that removes work. It just really makes your work highly efficient, but you still will get, tired because you're working. So then, of course, there is, there are minuses. So there was a lot of just the initial slowness of doing this, but yeah, really good article. I highly recommend going through and getting prepped. In this one, just make sure you translate from Russian to your preferred language, or English in my case. And yeah, I think that's a really good one. So do take a look at that article. I think it'll be good. Let me just find the other one that I was talking about. The post by Diego was quite good on LinkedIn. So I will next go to that if I can find it, because that was a really, really good article. And actually, I'll just stop by to see if anyone's asking any more questions. So, okay, that was a really thorough explanation. Sorry for the unclear question, but it was mostly about what you talked about. I noted information tracking as one of the central activities. Yeah, this audit of information is really, really useful. I think we tried that with other types of diagrams. I think it's a lot easier to do in event modeling, and also having that context with the current UX that's going on, and all those things. So yeah, and the link, yeah, I can share the link to that. Let's see if I'll put the link into our chat. Hopefully that'll get saved along with this. So everyone that's on chat, I pasted the link on that article, that Russian article. So feel free to peruse. It's there now. Yeah, so yeah, let me see if I can find the article from Diego. That's interesting. LinkedIn's not loading up. LinkedIn.com. Come on, what's wrong with you? Okay, and do I have to be logged in to search for stuff? Ugh. That's not good. Okay, let's see what I can do about that. I will search here, I think. Yeah, Diego Martin is a technical project lead that has been doing quite a lot. Yeah, I really liked his last post. That was quite good. If I can just find it in his history, I will share all of this with you. But it's a good, he made some really excellent points. I mean, things we talked about before, but I think the way he phrased it was really good. Let's see if I can copy this. Copy current URL. Let's see if this actually shows up. Ah, yes, okay. And I'll zoom in so we can all read it. It doesn't have a picture on here. It's weird. When you're not logged in, it doesn't show people's pictures. I'm not logged in on this, but you can actually find it. Again, I will post this in the chat too, so you guys can read it too. Oh, Aaron, thanks. Yeah, that you're right. That is the company time. So September 17th is not the article time. And it's October 27th, 2022. They tweeted it right after. Yeah. So yeah, that's really good. So hopefully this update works. Let me just transition this so we can read about it. Okay, back to OBS to switch. Transition, and hopefully you can see that. Yeah, so Diego's post from 5 days ago. So if you haven't connected with Diego Martin on LinkedIn, highly recommend connecting with him if you're going to be doing anything with event sourcing and event modeling. This is the activity that you can notice the similar structure of the event model. Look at the excellent job that he's done on the background there. Actually drawing out the UIs, keeping people engaged with the UX. I'm seeing more people doing this better than me. So that's encouraging that we have talented folks out there. So, this is important here. That's missed quite a lot. How gaps in our story are easily detected and filled, right? This gap analysis of like where are we missing things in our requirements is so much easier to do with event modeling, and the idea of event sourcing behind storing the facts that the system stores makes it incredibly easy. I think this is one of those things that is an aha moment when people start to do this by default, is that they stop getting upended by these bad requirements. They can quite easily do that. So projects aren't started with ER diagrams. And if you're into domain-driven design, of course, this is fully compatible. As you can see, your bounded context are your swim lanes back here. You can start to talk about things. And yeah, what a fun way to engage about your system and talk about it. The UX UI design opportunities that get unfolded right in front of your eyes. That's really good too. We keep hearing about complaints how we're not customer centric or user centric, and usability is forgotten. This is a good chance to redeem ourselves as technicians, that we do listen to the usability people, the designers, the people with the vision behind the company, what they want to do with for their customers, what success looks like for them. So that was another good one. I was just thinking about it. Lots of lots of comments there from the usual detractors, like, oh, I don't need any of this. The old way works just fine. Well, if the old way worked so fine, we wouldn't have so many problems in the industry. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff goes. Be warned when you read the comments. The same old FUD getting thrown around. So hopefully that helps. So Jeff and Sean, I posted both links in the chat, so hopefully you guys can read those, and let me know if you have any other questions. Otherwise, I'll keep scrolling to see what else I can find here. I guess we had there's some models. Unfortunately, event modeling does cross over with actual modeling, which is kind of fun. But generally, event modeling doesn't do that. So, and there's Fractalio, early adopters of event modeling. Always happy to get their support and support them in turn. This is the announcement for our current AMA. So let's see what else was talked about in the last couple of weeks here. The open practice library, it's interesting. I saw this pop up a long time ago. I'm not entirely sure how these guys are documenting how everything is done, but we are on there, thanks to Patrick. I'm not sure what kind of system they're using to document different styles of doing system design or methodologies, but they are there, so they're really happy to be using that. And of course, some Elon Musk topics, of course. I think Steve Twitters reportedly could no longer make changes to code as of noon today. So Steve, being the smart guy that he is, yeah, he probably should start event modeling to reverse engineer what they have there for their code, and see if they can get it back on track. Yeah, so lots of things in the news lately that would obviously get a lot of help from event modeling. So we're using some event modeling for a dishwasher at the office. Lots of fun. And and this is actually going back before the last AMA, but I didn't say this interview on YouTube here with
This is a loosely coupled show with James Hickey.
Let's pause that. But James and Derek do a good job here. It was kind of one of my favorite podcasts that I had, which was kind of fun. And then of course we had this other experience from. Let's see if I can make sure I pause this. But the API hour from France was also a really good story here on that. Now I'm finding these just by searching for event modeling on Twitter, and of course you'll be able to do the same thing on Mastodon starting this week. So this experience from France is really good as well as to how they did things. This goes back to our previous AMA. So I'll try and review this every 2 weeks as to all the different things that were talked about. I'll also try to do event sourcing so that we can take a look at what was discussed. Fractalio, of course, always contributing good stuff about Decider, which is another pattern that was done by Jeremy Chassing, who's a really good event sourcing, event modeling guy out of Paris. Really big into functional programming. So the Decider pattern is something that he's employing that's very at home with this by the slice method of specifying things. So so a lot of interesting insights, like state machines and event sourcing are a good fit. Of course, you have quite a good crossover to thinking about state that way, and seeing events as the inputs and their values to change the state of whatever you need, whether it's a read model or anything like that. So the book is coming along. It is something that I really need to finish ASAP because a lot of people want the book. It'll be the next level of adoption, I think, for event modeling. I'm seeing really good results, especially for systems that require good audit. So a lot of interest from logistics companies. We're dealing with at least a couple of logistics companies now as clients, because that audit trail is so important that the rest of the system, how it works without event modeling or event sourcing is less important and might as well just be put into the fold. So that's something that I'm seeing quite a bit of. And of course, fintech. We're seeing trading companies, anything to do with finance, especially something that needs high accountability, such as trading systems where you're responsible for people's money. You're starting to see a lot of event sourcing going on here, and the old guard is sort of changing. It's we just need good logging to be able to decipher how things went wrong. That last leap of let's just make the log the state so that we can actually rely on it properly and not be at the mercy of someone's mistake that they logged the wrong thing or forgot to log something, or start to lean into some weird AOP or monad patterns to try and make this a technical issue only. I think event sourcing and event modeling bubbles that up quite nicely to the business level, so that you're way better lock in step on those types of systems. But again, we're the experiment that uses event modeling and event sourcing for everything. So yeah, we'll be the the guinea pig for everyone. 7 years going, we'll have a ton more experience to draw upon from you. I think we'll be doing a lot more with event sourcing outside of Event Store. I think we have a lot of Event Store solutions out there. I think one of the core issues for adopting event sourcing is trying to add an Event Store instance, even in the cloud. So we'll probably be looking this year or this coming year to putting in an event store inside a regular Postgres, SQL, or whatever database, or other cloud infrastructure for state storage. I think that is going to be needed, so we'll continue to support Event Store for those that can do it. But I think given the thing that makes Event Store so appealing is this idea that you can have a highly performant system and be incredibly write centric, have that write centric scalability out of the box, which is really, really attractive. However, if I look back on the 7 years, how many of our systems actually needed that level of throughput, and was the greater cost in adoption the total cost of ownership of adding another tech stack or tech product into the mix at a company? So, adding our own library on top of a regular SQL or Postgres database will help adopt that. And I think what will happen in 2023 is that what we'll do is mimic the API. Our regular stack will have the same kind of endpoints for interacting with event handlers and command handlers, but it'll be swappable in terms of where the events are stored. We can just say, this just needs a regular Postgres database like anything else, and that's where that's probably where we'll end up for a default out of the box kind of experience, so that someone that wants to do event sourcing and event modeling, they don't need to change anything at all. Again, part of the reason of going with Event Store by default was that you kind of needed it to force the fact that you're going to need to do projections and read events, and that you can't kind of cheat and go look at tables directly. I think what's gone on in the industry over the last 10 years is that the event streaming, event-driven architecture has caught on as a really good default to scale systems. I think people were just giving it lip service before, but now it's starting, and with the amount of value in information, it's not something we have to prove anymore. And so there's not much danger in going and saying that I will do an event sourcing system and I won't use Event Store, and people won't break the rules, because they now understand by default that information is highly valuable, and that an update statement is the same as a delete statement from a lot of perspectives. So now that the industry's kind of moved forward, I think it's time for us, after doing this, for a ton of clients for 7 years, that we can start to course correct for giving an even smoother way to implement. So I think, from a business perspective, I think that's going to obviously be relying on open source. but we also want to make a product out of that. So we'll see if we can do some enterprise level things that we can sell, and we can probably integrate with other event modeling specifications. And since we would own the whole stack, that would be a lot more of a seamless experience when you go from something like ONote or some of the other tools straight to an implementation where it's just sitting there, very easily deployable to serverless or cloud hosted things with no specific type of technology. So it's taken a long time to kind of make that realization, but it was tempered with this idea of, is event sourcing big enough to do that, and do we need to be so stringent? So again, it's going to be a test of how well that interface is, how well that abstraction works on hydrating and filtering events and all those things. I still want to make sure that whatever we do in terms of a framework does allow domain-driven concepts like aggregates to exist, but also not be limited by that, and you can make a choice to filter events by any property that you want to make those functional paradigms not opinionated to, that might adversely affect someone that doesn't know domain-driven design or doesn't want to do domain-driven design. They shouldn't be constrained by domain-driven design to do event sourcing. So I think it's going to be an interesting year as after Christmas to see how we do that. And again, a bunch of stuff did get pushed by about a month because of personal stuff. My son was had an operation, all these other things that I had to work into the schedule. But yeah, there will be another workshop coming up before the year is over, for sure. The last workshop with Vaughn was insanely popular. I think we had over 70 people there. So there's this real high growth to event modeling and event sourcing, which is great. And so I'm probably going to have to split that up into multiple workshops in the spring with Vaughn. And but we're going to do another one just before the year end. I know people are trying to use up their budgets for education before the year is over. So we're going to try and fit everyone that wants to use that budget before the year is over. I'm thinking that it's going to be somewhere around December 10th. So we'll have about 3 weeks of just pushing that out. I'm going to try and make it more of a Christmas gift and do it something like a half price one. So we just get as many people in there as possible, keep the lights on, and have fun doing that. I started using the zoo example again in my event modeling part, which is a lot of fun. Always neat to see how people think zoos operate, yeah. So hopefully that'll be something that everyone's interested in. So yeah, again, John, yes, the book is coming. That's one of the 1,000 things I have to do every day is add more to the book, and I'm really looking forward to having it off my back too. And at the same time, I keep saying, the longer that I take to write it, the better the book is, because it's a new thing. So I'll have more experience to draw upon to make it, usable and applicable to a lot more things. So, yeah. Any questions besides about the book or anything like that? Nope, no questions. Okay, so I can go back to looking online for more content. What we talked about recently. Maybe you can do that in. Let's see here. I'll look through LinkedIn because that's some of the discussions happened there too. Let's see here. I actually found the picture of me drawing the thing that's in the background right now. I found the photo of someone. Someone took a photo of me. I think it was who was it? One of the Polish guys at the event Storming Summit. I scribbled that whole 7 steps, in about 15 minutes, and that was the original source of the article and all that. But I did locate the photo, which is good. I'll have to post it again. And let's go back to LinkedIn. Let me see. So yeah, on LinkedIn, event modeling is getting some more followers. Do try to put the more important posts into that. So if you don't want to get other information, if you follow or subscribe to event modeling on LinkedIn, I try to make it not as noisy as the social media stuff, and have some more significant posts there about it. I'm just trying to see if there's anything relevant here. Yeah, so any thoughts from anyone about supporting a stack that has the traditional things without event store in it? Again, the goal is not to alienate event store or anything like that, but make it a swappable piece in our regular stack, to make it easier for adoption. Let's see here. Yeah, I had some discussions on code coverage as well. I think with event modeling and event source systems, I think it's a little bit easier to do code coverage analysis. My old argument that going through the different data permutations is important, as we have here. You can test all the scenarios we can think of, but like with anything about code coverage, there's really no way to get all permutations, and there's this idea about do we trust ourselves to fill in the blanks, to have our minds fill in their blanks. Humans are good at doing that, and so there is a level of implicit trust when we make systems that we haven't and couldn't possibly have thought out of all the permutations, and so we have to concentrate on the important workflows, the important permutations, and allow the system to somehow be more resilient for those things that we didn't have time to get around to. So when you look at a slice in an event source systems represented by in an event model, how can you be as complete in terms of your testing in here, and just how much effort needs to go in here? Again, because we work on fixed costs, and people have to back up their work with fixing bugs for free. This has a natural way of being enforced. We're paying like that, but if you have an employee, regular employees where you don't pay them on fixed costs, you're going to have to find a better way to administer that, and maybe it's something that's tied to their performance reviews as to how often they have to go back to fix bugs. That's not perfect either, but at least it's not subjective. So if you have ideas on implementing good incentives and disincentives for having enough code coverage in your tests to keep the quality high, feel free to post those and discuss them on Mastodon with me and other places. So yeah. Oh, Yara is here. Really nice to see him. Yara, I knew you were going to be late, but that's okay. You're here, which is important. Oh, here's a good question. Do you put the schema for the events, read models, and commands in the post post-its of the model. Yeah, we actually started doing that for very critical systems like financial systems, trading systems. We started to just add the real schema and allow enough time for the business folks to get used to those things being there. So for our current project, that's exactly what we're doing, is we're adding every piece of detail about the data types and lengths of fields and all sorts of things right in there. And the business side is getting used to that it's there. They just know to pay attention to the names and the UX, etc. That this is just done for completeness. I think what we can do, obviously, is to hide those things as ONote and other tools get better, to be able to flip filters to say, do I want to remove all of the details, and basically not have that in the way as we're discussing some general concepts. So yeah. So we've started, but I don't think it's, this is just a notation. You can make your own shorthand. You can exclude these things if you don't need them, fill them in later when you do. Yeah, I think I don't want to really constrain people. A lot of people have added extra things on there. I know in one of our workshops we were discussing, like, I really want policies because that's what I learned in event storming. Like, okay, well, maybe you can, put a purple thing behind one of the processors and have something that's a policy if it makes you happy. We haven't needed it ourselves, so we're eating our own dog food, and so everything that you hear from us is something that's helped our projects move forward quickly. A lot of that has to do with not doing too many things because you're quote unquote supposed to do them, and so we drop them. And if we drop them and it causes harm to the project, we bring them back in. And essentially that's what event modeling is this continuous experiment of dropping things, putting substitutes in, putting in simpler things. How far can we drive that and still keep the project on time, high quality, all of those things, but at a bare minimum. So again, event modeling is about, its core purpose is to really simplify running projects, building systems, make it incredibly simple, remove a lot of the moving parts and all the different tooling. So yeah, if we add all of the types into the properties of events and commands and anything that's shown on the screen and the read models, that may be necessary for some things. Like I said, the trading system that we're working on right now is really that's really important. So we have it there, and we wouldn't. We would probably suffer if we didn't, because it's something that needs a high level of audit, and things are pretty much expensive if you're going to change them in that type of system. So we want that high accountability for where all the data is. Do we have the right types? Are we thinking about this the proper way? So yeah, great question, Yuri. That's definitely a depends answer, unfortunately, like everything. But event modeling is foremost a notation, and it can be adapted and implemented fully, etc. Yeah. Einar is here. Great to see Einar. Yeah, so automation in event modeling is always modeled as to-do list with service that ticks them off that list. Would you have a separate stream for the to-do list, or have it as a projection stored in the DB? So everything that's represented in an event model is, lives in the stream that's attached to the event. So like this to-do list lives where this event lives. To answer your question, I generally don't have a separate swim lane for the state of to-do lists and processors. The to-do lists are really yet another read model and are treated the same way. One thing, of course, to point out is that the processors that use a to-do list may span multiple swim lanes, and the processor is kind of how information gets from one subsystem to another. So the gears are kind of the only way to move information from one system to another, or manual input on a form. But in terms of any automation, the gears are how things move across boundaries. So the to-do list is something that gets checked off, and but I'm just going to reread the question here. Would you have a separate stream for the to-do list, or have it as a projection stored in the DB? So yeah, I could have it. If I want to be really explicit about it, I could make a separate stream to just concentrate on events that are going to be dealing with that list, and there may be some areas that are complex enough and you want to isolate the state of what quote unquote would be a process manager, and you want all that history of what the process manager looked at to be stored as events, then yeah, that's kind of what I would do if you need that. However, that's been, as we experienced, overkill for 99% of the cases that we've dealt with over the years, and it's just simple to treat a to-do list like yet another read model inside any service that's originating the need for a to-do list. So I hope that answers your question. So Yeri, next question about coverage. I got some ideas. My projects tend to have near 100% coverage with no TDD, pretty much using F# with church coding. Okay. I can see how 100% code coverage, if you're just concentrating on all the permutations of the simple code within a command handler, etc., can happen, right? However, these things are hard to get across to people that have only dealt with traditional systems. They don't have this discipline of using these pure functions to do state changes, and you get really lost in all the if-then statements that are nested and the permutations that can fall from that. So, with this crowd, when you say 100% test coverage, I totally agree. Yes, we do have that. Always as well. It's just a hard sell for people that have never done event sourcing and event modeling as their only way of moving forward. So I tend to stay away from that argument. Maybe I should make it more often. That it's a lot easier to account for those. We'll see. We'll see what happens. So test coverage. I don't know. There's a lot of the reason I avoid it too is because test coverage usually gets into the test-driven development arguments about the fact that test-driven development gives you design, which I totally disagree with. I think it's not a good place to have design. Obviously, it's design then is only done by developers, which is a crock. I don't think you want to get away from design being a siloed exercise. Whenever testing comes up with the coverage, I try not to bother with those arguments. But since we're here and we're like-minded people looking at event sourcing and event modeling, test coverage is just fine as long as you stop arguing about whether TDD is proper design. We can kind of end the argument there. But I haven't found a better way to get proper 100% test coverage than with something that has a good convention like event sourcing, and where you can have each command handler and event handler be small enough that it's easy to enumerate the permutations and attain your 100% quite easily. You can analyze that code and say that this is 100% test coverage, in terms of lines hit. There may be, combinations of the command handlers, etc., where permutations of data won't allow a certain thing. I had a lot of interesting arguments online about just the impact of event schema and the constraints on the properties of events, how those constraints build up on top of one another, where a subsequent 12th step in a workflow doesn't need to have certain permutations because it's impossible to get those values based on the analysis of the previous steps and how those values get transformed. So there's this whole mathematical way you can deal with all of this and have an actual theorem prover give you the 100% test coverage assurance. There's a lot of code analysis tools, I believe, being done by Microsoft Research back in 2007, 2008, that was going down that path of analyzing possible values, doing really heavy static analysis in C# to make sure that your pre and post conditions are always met, and you could add annotations to your code or attributes or whatever to make sure that that was just done by the compiler. There was not even a test, but it's a compiler level check of possible values, and that's even better. But we're getting into the weeds of of some things that have, I think, diminishing returns for regular systems anyway. Yeah, so automation and event modeling is always modeled as a to-do list with a service that checks them off. So I hope that, Einar, that answered it for you. Ivan is saying relational model is the widely used transactional model in IT industry, and I've used Postgres to prototype event sourcing and events without introducing new infrastructural components. Yeah, exactly. Event streaming is actually more difficult to implement with SQL databases. Yeah, I had some discussions with people about whether we would tack on some sort of CDC change data capture scheme to a Postgres database. I think it's okay. CDC is scary to people working on legacy code, but if you're using CDC as a strategy to move to look at a specific table, like an events table or a set of tables that have events, or however you schema them, then CDC isn't so scary. It's actually not an afterthought to compensate for a legacy system that you don't understand. It's actually used intentionally to have some guarantees about when those events are going to be published, etc. So as we look at building a layer on top of a regular database to do event sourcing, that's one of those considerations that we're going to take, whether those are options that we, if the query doesn't fail, that's good. That's as good enough to us as a write to the disk and be able to publish above the database, instead of going through this must hit the database first. Those would be good options to have depending on the type of system you want to build. But for 90% of them, they probably are going to be fine with write to the database, no error. Go ahead and publish. So we'll see. And of course, as you move up to that level, you're going to have to dive back into the database to update the read models, and then you can start to play around with different assurances. Keeping all that tech agnostic is going to be fun too. So we'll see. If else's feel like a part of the past. Yeah. If you're into functional, yeah, exactly. You get into some interesting ways of making really concise, readable code. But then again, I don't care. I'm just looking at slices. If it's nasty, rat's nest of if-thens, I don't care. As long as it moves the state forward in the way that I described in the event model, that's fine. And that's one of those hard things for people to understand, is that code isn't documentation. It's actually one of the worst things to document a whole system, because you're allowing only developers and programmers to understand the system. And not only that, but a specific stack. If someone doesn't know C# and they have a different language, then that other code is something that they're not going to understand fully. So it's actually, code as documentation is really, really myopic, and why we're sitting on event modeling. Yeah, I've had 100% in CQRS without ES again. Uh, Railway-oriented programming. It is hard as hell. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't consider CQRS without event sourcing, but that's just me. I know the trade-offs, and I wouldn't make that. I would rather do event sourcing without CQRS because it implies CQRS anyway. I'm just talking about the traditional interpretation of CQRS where you have materialized views and projections, and I don't care if they're in memory calculated on the fly, thrown away right away. They're still projections. So, event sourcing is why I put the stake in the ground at event sourcing, and tend to ignore any CQRS arguments because I find that it brings CQRS into the fold and the ideas behind CQRS anyway. Get it for free. As long as you do event sourcing, you're gonna get all the CQRS stuff eventually. Oh, so John asks, how you're implementing to-do lists. Do to-dos get marked off by the processor itself or as a result of the events and it produces? So the interesting thing about an event model, you see these little gears that it's a processor, that's actually just a mark. It actually has no implementation, whether it might just be a placeholder for a cron job that runs and checks that list. That's about it. It's really a marker. So yeah, you actually do have the idea that a resulting event is the thing that causes that to-do list to get a check mark, right? And so when you're dealing with the implementation, you take care of those things to make sure that you only have one running at the same, at once, so you have things picked up twice, etc. So you think about federating the data if this is a heavy process, to have those done by federating the to-do list to be handled by different cron jobs on different boxes or whatever it is, and that they don't have an overlap, so you don't do those things. But in terms of specifying how this works to the business, you don't want to get those implementation details on the event model because you want the conversation to be clear as to what the workflow is all the way through. So without getting distracted by implementation details. So I hope that makes sense, John. But thank you for the excellent question. That's there is some interesting things that we discuss in the workshop where, if these to-do lists exist in one system and they publish things to other systems, well, then subscribing to events from other systems requires yet another processor. That's true, but it's a standard pattern that you'll employ everywhere, so we don't want to complicate the event model by showing that implementation that you have these things that have to be listened to, or they're fire and forget and we don't care. I simply don't put them in. They haven't had any value to executing on projects. It's generally seen that as long as you have a to-do list, that there is a automation going on, and you'll trust developers to make sure that it continues to follow the workflow as best as possible. And that's that's an area that doesn't have a high value for explaining how things work. There may be exceptions. Like I always use the example of online ticket sales, where you're going to have to deal with the fact that there's a really in-demand ticket that everyone's going to be hammering the site for at 10 a.m. on Saturday, that you're going to have to get into how that system's going to work and bubble up those concerns up to business as well. So yeah, for sure. Thoughts on downstream read models versus downstream subscriptions? I see them as the same thing. I don't necessarily would bother to identify one as the other. If a subscription is something that needs to check whether it missed something or not, like a newspaper subscription, your Sunday paper didn't arrive, would you call the company to get your copy of the newspaper for Sunday? Those analogies I would start to look at. How important is that for something? Are you able to concede that some things aren't going to make it? Is it crucial for some of those things? Again, analyze the information and its value. Are you trying to run a system that's 100% for everything, and you're gonna, eat the costs of having receipts and acknowledges back? Is it something that has to be business facing, or is that an implementation detail that you're going to take care of? Those are the questions I would ask myself. So I'm not exactly sure in terms of downstream read models or downstream subscriptions what the exact difference that you're getting at there in terms of those terms. But again, I see everything as a projection off of an event that has happened. Again, we're just kind of talking about how some of that gets across from one system to another using processors. So I hope that makes sense. So in terms of just as I'm thinking about this, I think what we're going to do is, if I take a look at my calendar here for December, I think what we're going to do is have a workshop probably around the 12th and 13th of December. That's a Monday, Tuesday. I'm going to change the website to have that, and then we can do a full day. If you have people at your work that need to know this and need to get some training on it and go through all my presentations, and have our guys go through our stack and work through examples over the 4 hours on Monday and 4 hours on Tuesday, look for that workshop. I'll announce it probably later today. So hopefully that'll get the rest of the people at your company on board. Okay, so thoughts on downstream. If I need information from another stream in a downstream system, should I give that other system a read model or allow it to subscribe? So you need to get, if something knows about something in another system, you want to represent it as an event, and eventually, you will have to hook it up to a read model for whatever purpose that information is serving, whether it's showing up on another page in some sort of a report or data on the screen, or whether it's used for some sort of automation as a to-do list. So I would do that. I would definitely, I try to make sure that the events capture what information is in what system at what time. I don't rely on read models or command handlers or anything else or screens to do that. I want to have an event in that swim lane saying that this information exists in this system at this time, if possible, right? So that's what I want to do. The orange and yellow, or yellow stickies, they kind of can be audited to look at the different swim lanes and say, okay, at this, and erase everything else, just looking at events. I can say that this time, through this workflow, this information is on this system, right? I want those assurances, whether that's a screen that someone pressed a button on, or an automated process that kicked off something because of a to-do list. That's secondary. It's important, but it's secondary, and you need to just know that I'm halfway through this workflow, and this other system now has this information. I can use the yellow or orange stickies to kind of say that and put my foot on the ground that this is actually true, and therefore I can make these further guarantees to the rest of my workflow that that this information is here, and I can rely on it to get these other systems to do what I want them to do, because they have enough state to do it. So that's one way of looking at it. And there's different purposes for these boxes, right? The blue and the green end up being really about dividing up the effort and having a good anchor to where the coding effort's going to be to make events stored or to project events correctly. Right, those are the building blocks. So Jose, hopefully that clears it up. It's keep things simple. Use events as the marker for when information is in another system during your workflow. That's why we quite a lot we start with just events in swim lanes and screens for swim lanes for different users. It's like what screens do all these different people see at what different times, and then underneath all that, which subsystems have what information in them, in the form of events, so that we can use that as the minimum guarantee to say that our system's going to act this way. And it's honestly the equivalent of doing a screencast of the system that you have, capturing all the changes on screens and who's seeing what, coupled with snapshots of your database along the way, right? Is this event in there? Is this event in there? As we walk through that. So that's kind of the mentality behind the event model, and it luckily goes hand in hand with event sourcing. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. And let's see if we have any other topics to discuss. Please keep asking questions if you like. I'm actually thinking, I don't know if you would be interested, but if I do every second Friday. This was supposed to be last Friday, right? But I was traveling, so I couldn't be here. So thank you for joining, first of all, on a different day. But I'm thinking every other Friday, I would kind of reverse engineer something like an Uber. I think we attempted it once, but we could take any services that are out there that people are familiar with, like ride sharing or whatever, and event model them and keep going with the implementation. Kind of like what we did with this time tracking system in the background here, but use other interesting domains that people are familiar with. We obviously did the hotel example. We did some automating of a zoo, and we can kind of crowdsource different fun systems that we want to build and design them together. I'd kind of take it slow and just kind of do it live, as you can kind of fast forward through it if you want. Maybe I'll get someone to edit them down to core steps later, so they can be like a how-to for each type of domain. Yeah, and so yeah, if you want to see that, I'll try and do that this Friday. And then of course for event modeling, I'm thinking of having a few backups of Miro boards with some templates from those. So like if you need, there's some workflows that are boring that every system needs, like logging in or signing up, or a sales report, or an inventory management screen. We could have some templates where you just grab an entire section, kind of like what we have here, and you'd be able to just grab something as a template and then copy it and adjust it, so that you'd get a leg up on just getting the registration thing. And if your registration thing needs something extra, like a upload profile picture, you could easily edit that. It's not like a standard template that you can't change, but you'd be able to just insert another part of the screen in there that's an upload profile pic or something, and just edit the events to have the link to the image or whatever it is, and then integrate it with the rest of your system, right? That's kind of the nice thing about event modeling, is that you get and event sourcing, and just this event approach, is that it really allows you to organize your data and your workflow for being easily customized and extended, or trimmed down even. Like maybe our template would have extra things like profile picture, but you don't need profile picture on yours. You should be able to very easily just remove that from the event model, etc., and show that you're just using a different version of that template. So yeah, if that sounds good, then I will do that. I'll try to schedule them on a regular time, and then try and get someone to edit them for me, because I think I'll be running out of time doing these things all the time. If I sit on YouTube, I won't get anything else done. But I think it's needed, and it might be a very specific kind of AMA, because we'll be using a real example to kind of build it together. Maybe people that want to try and participate with it too, we can kind of divide and conquer and build different parts ourselves. I'll start another mural board for people to be able to participate in. So hands-on is like the best thing, right? You want to have real experience with the mechanics of this thing, and also the mindset. You look at the questions here. How do you do pub sub and subscriptions and read models? You really get the hang of it when you're actually thinking about a real problem and trying to design it. So that should be a little bit more fun than just talking here and listening to me reflect on a real project. So it'd be fun to just work on one. So Aaron, I see a couple of people are interested, so at least we'll see three of you on Friday. I'll add another event to that meetup so that you can add it to that, and you'll get a notification. But I think I also will add them to YouTube, because I know a lot of times YouTube will give you a 24-hour notice that there's a live event coming up. So that might be something else I'll do, so that you can, if you're subscribed to the channel, you'll get a 24-hour notice that at this time we're going live to do this. So so Ivan writes, I am lucky I exclusively model and implement event source systems. For the last 5 years, event modeling was a missing link, and it helped tremendously. Yeah, I mean, that's the same story for us. It's been, we're in our 8th year, and I've been doing event sourcing stuff since 2008. So it was definitely something that was missing for me too. And it just, the traditional way of specifying software just didn't feel, really like something that fit well. It missed the opportunities that event sourcing gave you. It is simple. You don't need a book to adopt it, but like any concept out there, people just say, well, it has to have a book to be real, so I got to do it. It's the price of entry to modern software development kind of zeitgeist, or whatever you call it. So I will write it begrudgingly. I hope it'll be good. And again, the format is going to be more of a Michael Feathers legacy code book, where the first third is really getting through the majority of the concepts, and then the last 2/3 is really about studying what you're seeing behind me, specific patterns on top of event modeling that say, okay, this is how you do pub sub to multiple subscribers. This is what you can do for a single one. This is what happens when you do a payment gateway integration. This is what happens when you're subscribing to external events, and all sorts of common scenarios that we've run through. I mean, I personally dealt with for decades in programming. And then just like the book in the legacy code book, that's what Michael did, is he went through and talked about the common patterns of how you get out of bad implementations or bad abstractions, and move them to be under test, and get them to be properly rewritten. So the last 2/3 of Michael's book is really this recipes for situations, and I like that format a lot. I think it was one of my favorite books reading, one of my favorite books to read in tech. And so I hope that format works for event modeling too, since I am looking at a lot of different common patterns and problems, and ways to use to-do lists and other things. So if the book is to be useful, I think it should be something that someone would have on their desk, and lots of people in different roles would have them on their desks as a reference, and they're like, hey, we need to integrate with this, our partner company, and we have this ETL job. Oh, well, let's just look in the event modeling book for ETLs and all this kind of stuff. And so, again, it's by example, right? Yeah, very, very good. You caught me there, Ivan. Event modeling is by example, so it just makes sense that the whole book should be by example as well. I think people learn that way, much better that way. So Yeah, it'll be cool. I think it'll be really fun to work on the subsequent versions with feedback, so, the next revision after the first one, it's like, oh, but you missed this pattern, or what do you do in this case? Getting the feedback from the community after the people that needed a book finally got a chance to read a book with their feedback, we can together kind of put some extra material into a second revision to clear things up. I think yeah, Michael was always bugged for a second version for legacy code, but he never did. Even though I think he had some second thoughts about some of the patterns he put in there. So I think I'm gonna be updating the book, once a year once it's out. But it's that first hurdle to get the entire thing out. The revisions should be a lot easier. Again, most likely there'll be a few changes for the front of the book, but then I think we might have bigger additions to another pattern to add to the reference side and things like that. So I think that's the format we'll do. But if you have ideas that or other book formats that worked for you that you really liked, let me know. It might be something we include, and it should be better with some more feedback. So yeah. Any other questions for today? Anything you want me to show you? Any particular problems you're trying to solve in your wherever you work in your projects? I'm actually happy that this whole stream actually worked pretty flawlessly. I think last time I had a ISP, our internet here was pretty bad, and we had to cut it short because the signal wasn't getting out to YouTube. And it was something with the ISP because I'm on the wired network here for this, so there's no Wi-Fi interference or anything like that. But yeah. All right. Well, if there's nothing, I'm gonna get on with my day, and if you have further questions you forgot to ask, again, let's go use Mastodon. I've had a tremendously really good experience at Mastodon. If you don't have an account on Mastodon, sign up. We have a really good instance. Our CTO runs it, Nicola. So I think there's a lot of event sourcing people on that particular instance anyway. So if you look at my Twitter account, the pinned tweet has a link. You can just use that to sign up, and I think you'll be pleasantly rewarded with how Mastodon allows you to just get the content that you want on the subjects you want, and there's no algorithm that's gonna bury the things you're interested in because someone's advertising or something is trending or whatever else Twitter does to try and drive traffic or advertising dollars. None of that exists on Mastodon. I'm really happy that people have moved there. A lot of people have moved there, so I look forward to seeing you there, and I'll be, like I said, creating those accounts for event modeling and event sourcing in our company's homepage as well. So lots. There's also a labs component. Those of you that want to do a startup and need help, that whole Adaptech Labs is happening. It's using event sourcing as a default approach to starting entire companies. So anyway, really looking forward to this year coming up. We've had a pretty tough year after COVID and recession, so we're not out of the woods yet, but I'm really excited for next year, and it's been a good one too this year. It's definitely with its challenges, but looking forward to the next one. So all right, and don't forget workshop coming up. I think let your friends know. It'll be December 12th, 13th. I think those are the 2 days we're going to try for. I'll be announcing that, and then of course I think I'll be in Europe in January or February for a larger conference. It's slated to be in Munich. Again, this was supposed to happen in December, but things have slipped. So with the schedules, but they will be done in January, and of course look for the book as soon as it's out. So thanks so much, everyone. See you next time. That'll be this Friday to work on some real examples. So keep your ear to the ground for the announcement. And thanks so much. See you online. Bye, everyone.